Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murder Sheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Summers in New Jersey were made to wow you. From sun and wows to fun and wows, chillin' wows to thrillin' wows. So come see what your wow's gonna be. New Jersey. It's one summer wow after another after another. Find your wow at visitnj.org. New Jersey. Little state, lot of wow.
Content warning. This episode is going to be a question and answer recording. I don't know exactly what we will be discussing in the episode, but there's a good chance it's going to involve murder, including the murder of children and perhaps sexual abuse. Knowing Anya, there's a good chance there'd be some profanity.
Hey, everybody. It's currently December of 2023. It's the waning days of this brilliant year. And so what we're going to do is close things out a little bit with a question and answers episode. We've gotten a lot of questions from our listeners, and we're going to pick some of them and answer them as best we can. So probably going to be talking about a range of different cases. And just know that we appreciate you for listening. We appreciate every listener who submitted a question. And we hope you're all having a nice holiday season and getting ready for a great 2024. My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is a question and answer session to close out 2023.
So we posted a request for questions both in our Patreon group and in our Facebook group. And so I think Anya is going to start by reading a few questions.
Absolutely. Here's one from Lydia. She asks, do we have any intelligence or opinions on what exactly precipitated Richard Allen's move from Westville Prison to the Wabash Valley Prison? And of course, this refers to the defendant in the Delphi murders has been moved from one prison way up at the northernmost part of Indiana to a prison to this western part, southern part, sort of, I guess kind of in the middle. He's very far away now. It's still very far away from where he's from, but it's slightly closer to his former attorney, Andrew Baldwin. So we kind of did the math, and that's what we ended up figuring out. We don't know why exactly this happened. We can tell you that we've not heard about any sort of incident that, caused this. And we will say that Wabash Valley has a better reputation amongst the people in the correctional space that we've spoken with.
We also know that Westville is undergoing extensive renovation. I don't know if that played a role in this, but it's quite possible that it did.
Next question from Joseph. Any idea whether the Klein/Anthony Schatz connection coincidence is still being actively investigated in the Allen case? What's a rumor? What's conjecture? What's solid? And, they note that there's just so many bizarre ways that Klein sort of popped up in this case. Was it a coincidence? Was it something more? I don't know if we can really answer if we know if it's currently being investigated. I think the fact that nothing has ever been filed against Kegan Klein indicates that there's not probable cause there.
And we know it was looked at very hard and very, very seriously. And so the fact that even after that level of investigation, they've still not found enough to file charges, I think that's worth noting. I wouldn't be surprised if some investigators might still be working on that particular lead, but
we don't know that.
I have no inside information on that.
And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the resources are being more devoted to the angle that they currently, I think it's possible that there's mixed opinions. I think it's possible that it's been let go entirely. I don't believe, the one angle I don't believe is that there's some sort of master plan where, it's all going to come together and there's going to be a Perry Mason moment at trial where they say, now we're bringing in Kegan Klein. That's not typically how it works. Because, with the kind of the coincidences that Joseph mentions, did he plan to meet the victims? All we know is from the transcript of the interview with Kegan Klein and police, where the police accused him of saying that he was supposed to meet Libby that day. Is that true? We don't know. And his possible presence at the gas station, the Marathon gas station. Yeah, we know that was evidence lost seemingly by the FBI, but lots of weird coincidences. I'm afraid we can't really give a lot of solid answers at this point because it just remains unclear. But hopefully after whatever happens with Allen is sort of resolved in some manner, there can be an opportunity for there to be more openness with this.
That would be great.
Here's another question from Joseph. What are the obscure, lesser-known cases that are your own personal obsessions? Ooh, I like that.
One case that's lesser known that I've always been very interested in. I don't even know how you define lesser known, but this is a case involving the murder of a woman named Valerie Percy in Illinois in the mid-'60s. Her father was a senator running for re-election, and she's actually murdered in her home during the election campaign, and there's been no one charged in that crime. And there's all sorts of interesting details and speculation. And now that I mention it, I'm surprised we haven't covered it on the show. We probably should. It's a case I've always found very, very interesting.
Yeah, and that's a shocking one to me because I'd never heard of it before meeting Kevin. So I was like, a politician, a high-profile politician whose daughter ends up murdered. You would have thought that would have been more in the culture. And I'm not saying that it's obscure because I'm sure a lot of people are listening and they might even know about it, but it's not the most high profile case.
And another thing, I think a lot of us, by us, I'm including everybody in the audience, we consume so much true crime media, we hear about the same cases over and over again. So it is very interesting to come across cases that we haven't heard discussed endlessly. And one resource I've often turned to find cases that are new to me, and this is odd, I admit, but there was a true crime magazine back in the 1930s that in the 30s actually did a great job covering cases that were very well known then, but have faded into obscurity now. And so I'll pick up an issue from like 1935, and there'd be like 7 or 8 really fascinating cases in it that I've never even heard of before. And I've also been considering maybe periodically I should just pull out an issue from my collection and do some cases from that issue that would be new to most people.
What is the magazine called?
Magazine is called True Detective.
Time is a flat circle.
It's not the TV show. And also, if you've heard of True Detective magazine, it ultimately became something very different from what it was in the 1930s.
Which is like a lurid pictures of lurid like drawings of women in distress on the cover, right?
Yes.
You're making yourself sound pretty bad in this episode.
In the 30s, it had like articles by like police detectives about cases they'd worked. Newspaper writers would write about cases they'd covered. Very, very interesting cases. Most of it's totally new to me.
So if you ever come across Kevin reading a True Detective, he'll say, "It's just for the articles." No, yeah, I've you've shown me some of the early edition, the 1930s kind of, and yeah, it is good journalism back then. It's definitely lurid, but there's some really interesting cases that were so big back then and are just not big at all now that I find fascinating. As far as my obscure case that I am obsessed with, I think I used to be more in that, and I'm sure like in the past I could have thought of something where I was really into it. Honestly, working in this space, it's become less of a hobby and more of like an all-consuming job. So I don't know if anything comes to mind right now, because I feel like the answer would have in the past been burger chef. But of course, that's not really that obscure. Certainly not in Indiana.
Can I ask you about a case which I believe you have maintained an interest in?
Yes, please do.
There was a bottle of poisoned Tylenol. Why don't you tell that?
Okay, there's one case I'm interested in, and this kind of gets into the Tylenol murders. There was a woman from Yonkers, New York, who went to I believe, a grocery store. I think it was A&P in Bronxville, New York, which is where I'm from. And she bought the bottle, consumed it, and died. And people have wondered, was that tied to the Tylenol murders, or was that something completely different? So I'm actually pretty and there was a suspect that came up. This
was years after the Tylenol murders in Chicago.
Yeah. I think it was still in the 80s.
It was still in the 80s, but it wasn't like the next day.
It wasn't the next day. It's a very weird case. And it just was one. It was just one. So I'm very interested in that case, I would say.
But I don't think that's something we could cover unless we found a lot more on it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It would be difficult to cover outside of the context of the Tylenol murders, which has already been very well covered.
Do you have another question?
This is from SE. This is about the D.B. Cooper case that we recently interviewed investigator Eric Eulis on that. He's great. He's done a lot of research into the case, and so we had that conversation. So SE wants to know, was there not an appetite to solve this case? Could Boeing and the aerospace industry as a whole at the time have had enough juice to squash the investigation? Because maybe defense contractors, the Department of Defense, or even national security just comes into play. And they don't really want to bring, like, oh, we hired this guy and he robbed us to the front page. And so, I think that's a good question, and I think it's an interesting one, and I like that you're giving reasons about why something like a conspiracy like that could happen, because it's not just like tinfoil hat, oh my god, Boeing did it. It's like maybe they're like, okay, do we want to really admit that we effed up this badly? So I really like the way you kind of thought that through. My personal opinion is, if you're a big organization, you don't really want somebody to get away with doing something like this, because then it could inspire copycats and make you look like a mark. That's just from a PR perspective. I've never worked for a massive aerospace industry company, so perhaps there is more to it, but that would be my instinct, that they would not want somebody to get away with this, even if it was a former employee, because that would empower bad actors. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I think you've answered the question brilliantly.
I'm just that good. All right, those are some of the questions that I pulled up.
Ready for some questions for me to fire
Oh,
at?
the Kevin questions.
These are
KQs.
Yeah. So Danny has a question that's going to put you on the spot.
Oh, Jesus, Danny, why are you doing it?
Not including the murder sheet.
Uh-oh.
What is your favorite true crime podcast?
Oh, man. Probably The Prosecutors, which is a boring answer because we've had them on our show and they've been, we love them. You know that. So a non-boring answer would be, I would say, I really enjoyed The Spectator, which is a podcast. It's like a limited series. It's about the disappearance of a newspaper woman in Illinois. Loved that show. Thought it was great.
Yeah, there's a lot of great podcasts out there. And we don't have as much time as we used to listen to them because we're working in that space now. But yeah, just because we don't mention a podcast doesn't mean we don't like it. The Prosecutors is great. True Crime Garage has done some great research on a lot of cases. They're always worth a listening.
Absolutely.
I haven't even heard an episode yet because it hasn't even made its appearance yet. But I have high hopes for Jason Blair's doing a true crime podcast this year. And I'm going to let slip that someone is going to be doing a podcast just devoted to Burger Chef. So Burger Chef case. So that is something that will probably be worth a listen.
Yeah. I felt at one point I was so burned out by true crime that I just wasn't listening. And so we're kind of getting back, I think, into it more. And there's some really good stuff out there. So it's definitely an exciting time to be working in this space.
And then I'm going to expand it a little bit and mention a couple of podcasts I like that are not at all true crime related.
I thought you were going to say a bunch of podcasts that I hate. We're putting people on blast today.
It's no longer actively running for obvious reasons, but Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast always would have great interviews with old-time show business people, and that's something I always enjoy listening to. I also enjoy Never Not Funny, which is a podcast done by the comedian Jimmy Pardo.
Yes. Very funny man. Alrighty.
Andy has a question that's a little bit similar to something that was asked before, but was a little bit of a twist.
Ooh.
Listening to the episode on D.B. Cooper made me wonder, are there any cases you've been obsessed or interested with that remain unsolved that you believe could be solved?
Oh, I like this. What cases have hope?
And for our purposes, let's define solve at not so much as getting a conviction in court, but getting an answer that would satisfy most people as, yes, this is what happened.
I have one answer, and there's a huge caveat that goes along with it, in my opinion. But I think if they were able to find remains in the Lauren Spear case, that could be solved. That's a big if, but I would love to see movement on that case. Her family, her parents deserve answers.
That seems solvable.
Yes.
I'm going to have the boring answer. I believe the Burger Chef murder case is solvable if enough resources would be put into it.
Yeah, I agree. Another big if.
Stephen has less of a question and more of a fiery demand.
Oh my gosh, Stephen.
I want more analogies involving Anya's hats.
Oh my gosh. I got so nervous about your question that my hat just blew off. That sounds kind of weird.
Is that even an analogy?
No, it's not. I'm sorry. I'm so tired.
You're letting Steven down.
Steven's just turning off the podcast now. He's done.
Anya's answer was kind of like one of her hats when she gets caught out in the rain and the hat becomes sodden and just collapses in on itself. That's what that answer was like. Was that so hard?
You know what? Like, it's so funny. I think, Kevin, like, you definitely love the idea of me wearing giant hats for some reason. I think it's and I get it because we both like watch a lot of old movies and people always running around in all these crazy hats. But I think you would love it if I became like an old timey newspaper woman who just had a giant hat on every day, just a wild new hat, like a head of hopper with less moral dubiousness. I think that's what you want for me. And hopefully that doesn't give the listeners the idea that I'm sitting around wearing giant hats every day, because I'm really not, but...
More is the pity. Is that so much to ask?
Oh, man.
There's nothing worse than getting home from your trip only to find you missed a can't-miss travel experience. That's why you need Viator. Book guided tours, excursions, and more in one place to make your trip truly unregrettable. There are over 300,000 travel experiences to choose from, so you can find something for everyone. And Viator offers free cancellation and 24/7 customer service, so you always have support around the clock. Download the Viator app now to use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Regret less. Do more with Viator.
If you could discover all the answers to any unsolved case, and this question comes from Stephanie, which case would you choose?
Burger Chef.
Burger Chef. That case is very important to us. It's the first case we really researched in depth, and we've come to know a lot of the players in the case, including investigators, possible persons of interest, family members, friends of the victims,
Witnesses.
And it's really, I don't even know what the word is, but to see how all of these people remain so deeply impacted and affected by a crime that occurred 45 years ago, it's sobering.
Also because there's so little, like, the crime scenes were wrecked, there's so many, like, turn off points and forks in the road where if this is true, then this, but if that is true, then that, and it's all depending on your interpretation. So it'd be great to get everything evened out and in order to fully understand it, because you would need all the information to fully understand it, I feel.
And it would mean so much to so many people.
Yeah.
Marissa has a question that I'm very, very interested in how Anya will answer this.
Oh my gosh.
Where do you see the podcast in 5 years?
Well, that's a really good question. That's probably something we should be asking ourselves too, frankly. We're the worst business people. I would say I hope that we're continuing to do this, I guess. Hopefully we have done some other new cases and made an impact in those cases, a positive impact in terms of raising awareness and getting out new information. But yeah, I hope we just kind of continue to expand the audience and, give people something that they feel is worthwhile listening and not a waste of their time.
One thing I very much hope is that 5 years from now, we will have done episodes covering a resolution in the Delphi case that satisfies everybody.
Oh, that's that caveat at the end there just throws the whole thing off. Yeah, I do hope, and we just want to say we appreciate everyone who listens and sticks around. And maybe you listen to all the episodes, maybe you just focus on Delphi, maybe you just focus on Idaho, maybe you just do this or that. Either way, we just appreciate you being here and listening.
Danny's back with another question.
Take two.
Designed to put us on the hot seat.
Jesus.
Do you think the West Memphis Three are guilty? Yes.
Yes.
Are we ready for the next question?
Yes.
My understanding is I believe the prosecutor is going to be doing an in-depth look at that case.
Oh, yes. And we will certainly be checking that out.
And we earlier did an episode in this case that was actually an interview with Danny. It's in our archives. Go back and check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Danny's great.
Danny's amazing.
Tell us about how you met. This is Christina.
Aw, thanks, Christina. That's like a nice little question. We met because of Burger Chef. We kind of tell this story to the press a lot, but we'll tell you guys the inside edition. No, I'm just kidding. There's no additional details. Basically, I was looking into Burger Chef. I wanted to do a crime story. I was, trying to expand. I'm just so interested in crime that I just wanted to do like a big splashy feature. And I was clipping all these articles about Burger Chef on newspapers.com. Then suddenly I got an email from this random dude who's like, "Oh, I see you're interested in Burger Chef. Oh, da da da." And I was like, and at the time, this is kind of funny and sad, but at the time I was starting to really struggle with a drinking problem. So my first instinct was like, what did I do? Like, did I drink too much wine and file some completely incoherent FOIA request? But it turned out Kevin had seen me on newspapers.com clipping all these articles and reached out. So we started chatting. He kindly provided me with contacts for an article, wrote the article, and then
I provided you with contacts for the article. I did not write the article.
No, I wrote the plagiarism scandal. No, yeah, I wrote the article. But then afterwards, we kind of just kept talking. And then we were sort of like, oh, we're in love. And then we were like, okay, let's do something about it. And yeah, and here we are. That's how we met. It's very weird. I remember I was telling my friends about Kevin. I was like, yeah, I met a guy. We were looking into a murder. And they were like, yeah, that makes sense.
Stacy, how does it feel to be suddenly podcast famous? You guys have blown up this past year. Has anything changed for you guys? Or are you just too busy working?
Oh, that's a really kind assessment. I don't really think we're famous in podcasting even.
We get recognized sometimes.
We do get recognized sometimes. And we always appreciate people who are nice. Get out of here, the murder sheets. No. It's really nice to interact with people who have listened to the show and engaged with it. So that's been nice.
It's strange because it's a constant struggle for me to remember that, because basically, so Ani and I go and we sit in a room and we talk and then we leave the room and then suddenly a bunch of people hear what we said. And so that's, I'm like an old man, like, what kind of wizardry is this? So
Kevin doesn't really know what a podcast is.
It surprises me sometimes that people are kind enough to listen. And I think if it was in the front of my mind as I was talking like right now, all the people who are listening, I would freak out.
Yeah, let's get out of here. Burn down the podcast equipment.
And I know sometimes people come on the show and they say, "Oh, I'm nervous," and it's like, why would you be nervous? It's just
you're talking to us.
It's just Anya and us.
You could kick our asses, verbally and physically.
But other than that, I think we do spend most of our time working.
Yeah,
so I don't think it has really changed us that much.
One thing we've tried, and I don't know, succeeded, failed, somewhere in between, is we don't want. We want the story to focus on whatever case we're talking about or whatever information or whatever guest we're providing to you. So we've made a decision to let more of our personalities on the show recently, within reason.
Yes, we've made a calculated decision to be spontaneous. That's how you sound.
I can't.
Jesus.
You were so silly today.
That's what you were saying.
Our shareholders thought that the stock would go up if we were to be charming. No, we used to be like, we can't show any personality or we'll die.
So we're loosening up, and that's sometimes an adjustment too. Not too long ago, we were having a chat with somebody who listens to the show, and we're like in a restaurant, and I make a comment, I don't want to eat chocolate because I don't like chocolate. And this person said, well, yeah, I know that because you mentioned it on the show. And it's like,
why did I do that?
I don't even remember half the things they say on the show, apparently.
Oh, Jesus, that's not good. It's yeah, but it's been nice, and it's been really gratifying to just meet audience members, but also just like, thank you for listening. I mean, that makes it possible for us to do this work, and
we're very grateful to you all, and we feel we're very lucky to have such an intelligent audience.
Yes.
And we are extraordinarily grateful for you all. I think the most valuable resource any person has in their life is their time. Because if you have a little bit of money and you spend it and it's gone, but maybe you can get more money if you whatever. Go rob a bank or something. But
hijack a plane.
Once you give your time to something, it's gone.
Yes.
It's gone forever. And so the fact that you all are willing to give us your time is something we really, really deeply appreciate.
We're not perfect. We don't get everything right. And so thanks for bearing with us, for being human, but also thanks for trusting us with your time and interacting with us. And it really means a lot, because we always try and strive to respect that time and use it wisely. I would say that in addition to that, it's been nice to meet other people in the podcasting space and kind of build a little community there. We've been very gratified by that experience as well recently. That's been something that's happened over this year that, frankly, I never thought would happen after some of our experiences. I wanted to be the hermit in the desert, but some very nice people have forced us not to do that. So thanks to them.
Kelly has a case suggestion, so maybe we should write this down. Kelly says, have either of you heard of David Hendricks and the murder of his family in Bloomington, Illinois back in the early 80s?
I've not.
I've not heard of that case.
We will do some digging into that. But no, thank you. Always feel free to send us case suggestions. We have a massive list, and we try to get to stuff if we can.
Yes.
Especially cases that are not necessarily super high profile.
Yes. Amber asks, if you were an ingredient on a hamburger, what would you be and why?
Oh man. What's everybody's least favorite part of a hamburger? The lettuce. What about you, Kevin?
I'm the guy that just goes in and gets hamburgers plain or just with ketchup.
Yes. No, usually he doesn't even eat the buns. He just they'll get the plate afterwards and the hamburger's gone.
I've been to restaurants, sit-down restaurants where I order a hamburger and say I just want it plain, and the waiter's like,
"What?
Are you sure?" They're shocked. They're stunned.
They're getting like a thermometer to test your temperature. Yeah, that is funny.
A very simple taste.
Maybe I'm the mustard when I'm getting a little bit spicy. No, that's stupid. Ignore that. Just falling apart over here. What are you looking at?
I'm just letting you go.
Kevin's like, I'm going to step back on this one.
Kate asks, who is your favorite mystery novelist?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'm gonna embarrass myself. I'm gonna friggin' humiliate myself in this episode. I don't know how to say her first name, but I'm gonna do it. And she's Irish, so I have no excuse. Tana French. I really enjoy her Dublin Murder Squad series, and some of her standalone books have been very good. So she's probably one of my favorites that's writing right now. I really enjoy her. But as for past ones, definitely Margaret Millar. She is a beautiful writer. Her plots are wild, and she's got a very biting sensibility about being a woman, about like suburban life, about all these interesting little themes that she has going through. I would recommend Beast in View, How Like an Angel, and The Fiend are some really good starts for her. But she should be mentioned in the same breath as like Raymond Chandler and Agatha Christie and stuff, but she's not. Her husband, Ross MacDonald, is also very good. He does more of the private detective sort of thing. And I really enjoy him too. Some of his works are great, but if you read too many of them all at once, just know that they're all basically the same plot. It's basically, I'm a detective. I'm going to come into town. Oh, something bad happened? But what if the really bad thing was 20 years ago? Yeah, we get it. Generational trauma, whatever. But I love him too. But I would say Millar's far superior.
I like Scott Turow quite a bit.
Crying about it.
He does great legal thrillers with very human characters that are very well constructed. I enjoy Margaret Millar. I really like John D. MacDonald, particularly his non-series books from the 1950s, the best known of which is probably Cape Fear. I enjoy a lot of paperback writers from the 50s whose works may not be easy to get.
List them.
Ed Lacey, Wade Miller, people of that nature. Thomas Dewey. Of course, the boring answers, Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler.
Oh, I love Dashiell Hammett. And Raymond Chandler. His writing is so awesome, but his plots are just, wait, what?
Clifton Adams, he's mainly known for his westerns, but he did a couple of crime stories that are really effective. Jim Thompson. I go on and on.
Kevin's very, very, very smart about books. I thought I read a lot, and then I met him, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm basically illiterate.
This one is from Brandy. What is the case that has disturbed you the most that you've reported on?
Oh, geez. That's a really good question. There's something about the Wendy's massacre that just messes me up. It was so brutal and just, I mean, all murders are needless and awful. But there's something about that case. I think because I read about it as a kid. I was the kid reading like the New York Post and the New York Daily News at my grandparents' house because they got the tabloids, and I'd be like, what's going on? And then it'd be like, massacre of Wendy's employees in a basement. And I was like, yeah, that one really disturbs me. I don't know. It must be because of that and just the brutality.
We haven't reported on it, but one case that really disturbed me as a child, and it still to some extent haunts me, is a family murder in Fort Wayne, where the child of the family, I believe was about 10 years old, was zipped into a sleeping bag and beaten to death.
Oh my God.
And I always just felt that sounded really a horrifying way to be killed, to be that helpless. Emotionally, the case we've covered that impacted, I think, both of us more than we expected was we did an interview with the family of Michael Bryson.
Oh my God.
This is a young man who went missing while camping. And the details of the case aren't necessarily what got to us, but just listening to his parents, these two very good people who obviously love their son very, very much and who still seek to honor him. Just hearing how much his loss impacted them and how it changed them. That was incredibly moving and disturbing and upsetting. And in terms of disturbing, another thing that comes to mind is an element of the Delphi case. We went to the Kagan Klein sentencing hearing.
Oh, geez.
And when it was laid out, the details of some of his crimes involving child sexual abuse materials. We say child sexual abuse materials a lot, and we don't always recognize what it means. And in the sentencing hearing, it was laid out in detail. This is what is in these materials. Yeah. And that was very, very disturbing and upsetting.
Some of what was discussed there is seared on my brain forever. And just Delphi in general with those two girls, what happened to them, what their families have been through since, really disturbs me. One I would just add to with me personally is Kirsten Bergeman, a young woman who went missing in Indianapolis a few years ago. She was dealing with a drinking problem, alcoholism, potentially, certainly problematic alcohol use. And we talked to her family with, that case is still unsolved. And I remember that week when I was producing that episode. I remember Kevin's like, "You've kind of been in a bad mood all week. Like, what's going on?" And I realized that it was really affecting me because I just felt like I related to what she was dealing with on a certain level. And to have that happen to her before she could have a chance to even try to get better is really devastating.
Christina has a question. Have you looked into the missing persons case of 6-year-old Shannon Sherrill from 1986? I remember this and how sad it was.
We have not.
We have not. I remember the case too, and we should cover it, and we should add that to the list.
So she was never found?
I remember it also because there was, I believe it was in the early part of this century, maybe 2003, 2004, where a woman falsely claimed to be Shannon.
Oh, geez.
And that was really a stunning act of cruelty to the family. Brian asks, record requests. Which agencies are the easiest and toughest to obtain records from? Why do you think this is? And what do you feel needs to change to make it different?
Oh, man, that is such a good question. Love that question. In Indiana, it's tricky in general because there's a lot of leeway that law enforcement has with unresolved cases. One thing that would be really helpful is if on a national level or on a statewide level or some level, there was some legislation that made it so that after a certain amount of years, things have to be public. I think that would be good. Maybe with a few specific carve-outs or exceptions to that. I think that with the advent of DNA technology, there are older cases getting solved. And so I wouldn't want anything to disrupt that. But I also think that, like, if you're sitting on a case from the 20s, you're probably not going to get it. Like, you probably should just let it out to the public. As far as best and worst, I mean, I don't want to get salty on here. In our experience, Indiana State Police is by far the worst, right?
By far the worst.
By far. Like, as in letting other podcasters in to see a bunch of stuff they shouldn't and then being like, "Ooh, well, we didn't really mean to do that.
So it doesn't count."
Doesn't count. Oopsies. So definitely ISP, because that's just ridiculous. Best? Who would you say is the best, Kevin?
There were a couple of times we got just extraordinary responses to records requests.
Oh, FBI's second worst. 3 years for the Burger Chef, but they did get us that, so they're not the worst.
I remember when we were doing our episodes on the donut shop killers, Anya more or less on a whim said, "I'm going to see if this particular police department has records on this case." And they did. They sent them relatively quickly. It wasn't hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Yeah, I love them.
That was totally unexpected.
Oh, wait, who were they, though? Were they in California?
Yes.
Yes. So California, you guys are the best. Florida tends to be very good, too.
Why is that?
Sunshine laws. They have very strong sunshine laws. Also, just ensuring that people are not, like, trampling all over the spirit of the law. Unfortunately, FOIA can be pretty toothless, and the state equivalents can be pretty toothless. So when they're not enforced, it just kind of goes against everything.
Debbie asks, is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
Do you care to elaborate?
No. What do you think?
I think no. Again, I'm the wrong guy to ask. I don't really... You talked earlier about how I don't always eat hamburger buns. I also don't often eat hot dog buns. And that is because you get a bun and it's so big and fluffy, it totally overwhelms the burger or the hot dog. What?
You have so many specific little food things. Like, you confound waiters, I'm sure, and wait staff, because they're probably coming back and they're like, wow, this guy must have really hated this bun. Like, they're not thinking, he always does this. This is what he always does. They're thinking, geez, wow. this man's a hater. Yeah, it just doesn't. The vibe isn't sandwich. I think of it like a sandwich, like it's a specific thing.
Sarah asks what type of law I have practiced. The area of law I did most of my work in was intellectual property law, which is like copyright, trademarks, contracts, things of that nature.
You worked with artists to negotiate contracts with companies, things like
Publishers,
that. Yeah.
Licensees.
Yeah, neither of us had a background in criminal reporting or law before we got into this.
Right.
So just very interested, enthusiasts.
The way you do retail reporting, you can take that and you can apply it to criminal reporting. And the way you do intellectual property law, you can take that set of thinking and that approach to things and you can apply it to talking about criminal law.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the research fundamentals remain pretty similar. So we always want to be upfront about our backgrounds because we don't want you to be like, sometimes, I'm not going to name names, but sometimes in the podcasting world, people can get a little bit like, I'm an investigative reporter. And then you look back and you're like, what have you investigated? I did some investigative pieces for my previous outlet, and I was very proud of those. And I would say that they were investigative journalism. And I did that with some frequency, but I would never have called myself an investigative reporter because I also just did a lot of random beat reporting and it'd be like, oh, let's listen to Walmart's earnings call. So because it wasn't what I fundamentally always did, I wouldn't call myself that, but I still learned those skills doing that work.
Brian asks, what has been your most memorable moments this past year, personally and professionally?
Oh, man. Just crisis after crisis. I feel like I'm having a hard time remembering anything because it's just been so much. It was memorable, but not in a good way to have, leaked photos sent our way from the Delphi case. That was was horrible. Yeah, that's another thing that's burned in my mind forever, I think. And I wish it wasn't. And that was memorable. I just I guess naively didn't think like anything like that would happen.
Another moment that stands out to me is that for a while we had been covering Kagan Klein's legal situation, for lack of a better word, in Miami County, in Peru, Indiana. And during that time, we, like all of you, had a lot of questions about what was going on. And we weren't able to get all those answers when it was happening. But this year, after the sentencing, the prosecutor who handled the case, Courtney Allwine, was kind enough to sit down with us and answer all of our questions. I think she spent a few hours with us answering our questions. And I thought that was very gracious and kind of her.
Yeah, that was a great interview.
That stands out in my mind.
Yeah, she did a really powerful job on that case, along with her co-counsel, Jen Kiefer.
And of course, it was all under the supervision of prosecutor Jeffrey Sinkovich.
Yeah, so Power Squad in Miami County. And I would add to that one moment that was just a happy moment, and we really didn't have any impact on it. It was just more of like, was hearing that there had been an arrest in Laurel Jean Mitchell's case up in North Webster, Indiana. That morning, people were in the inbox. Did you hear about this? And people were excited. And I was just so happy for that family. And people were like, wow, the murder sheet really was on this. They knew this was about to break. No, we didn't. Thanks for thinking that, but no. And that was a great day.
Adria asks, if you had a personal chef and didn't have to worry about cooking, what comfort meal would you want made for you?
Oh, that's such a good question. And wow, what a delicious fantasy that would be. I'm going to sound like a freaking like loser in terms of, I guess, grilled cheese / mac and cheese, like a fancy little mac and cheese. I could do that.
I thought my answer was going to be embarrassing.
Oh, I'm a simple woman, Kevin. I don't
So you call
I'm not
it
sophisticated.
You're hiring a personal chef.
Maybe like an elevated mac and cheese.
Well, I'm going to give you a little glimpse into our home life. Is right before Right before
God.
we started recording this episode, Anya said, I'm going to make myself a grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh,
And I
God.
said, do you need any help with that? She said, no, I've got it.
It was a
And
disaster.
it came out burned to a crisp.
And also the cheese ones have melted inside. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I messed it up that badly, but it was a disaster and I ended up giving it, a lot of it to my dog. It was just, yeah, that was humiliating.
Yeah.
I'm not good at making food. I've never claimed to be.
I have the diet of like a 10-year-old child. I eat lots of...
Whose parents don't care about feeding him in a healthy way. A neglected 10-year-old child.
I love hamburgers, pizza.
Soda.
Drink a lot of soda.
Soda.
Drink a lot of soda. Many a time when I've gone to a doctor's office and they ask me what my diet is, they burst out laughing or they put their head down in their hands.
And weep.
I love candy.
He loves
As long as it's not chocolate.
Yeah. So that
Also can't have red dye in.
But what would you have your chef do? That's the question. Just put a bunch of candy in a bowl and leave it on the floor?
Sounds pretty good. Michelle asks, do you guys stand by your opinion of the West Memphis Three's guilt, or are you open to reconsidering the case with a deeper dive into contradictions and retractions of key witnesses? So I'll admit to you, I've not kept up with everything about so-called retractions or what have you. I would be interesting if you or anyone else has information that you think would change our minds. We're always interested in looking at it. I admit the ones I think, okay, this is what happened, I then don't spend a lot of time on the case. And based on what I've heard about the case and my knowledge of the case, it was pretty clear that they're guilty, but I'm certainly capable of being wrong. And so if people have information that would tend to cast doubt on the conclusions I've made or that Anya has made, I think we'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in some of these cases, you do come out with an opinion and you're kind of like, all right, pretty much heard what I need to. But that doesn't mean that you're not open-minded if you get something that completely shatters everything. There's been cases that I've changed my mind on, over, in reaction to, okay, now we have something new here.
Yes.
Right? And that case is no different. You can have a hard opinion, but still at least leave room for you could be wrong.
I think it's fair to say we've changed our opinions on the Delphi case a whole bunch of times.
Oh my God, every friggin' day.
And I'm sure we will change it many more times before we're done.
Yep. We're like one of those, what are they called? Weather vanes. Top of a house, spinning around. That's how it feels.
Jessica has 2 questions. The first one, what's your favorite music, bands, artists, and songs individually?
Oh, wow, that's a fun question. I love music. I actually I'm weird because when I'm writing, whether it's writing a script or whatever, I really like to listen to music while I'm doing that because otherwise I kind of feel like I'm not in the writing mode. And I know sometimes people find that distracting, but that's just me. I like all kinds of music. I was raised on, my parents had all those best of the 80s CDs, best of the 70s. I had a really strong Beatles phase in high school where I could tell you, I mean, I actually still know that their first manager, Brian Epstein, died on August 27th, 1967. I'm going to look up that date so I don't embarrass myself. But I was into this community. Yeah, I used to be a real snob about music. I was like, everything outside of the 1960s sucks. And then that kind of softened to the point that I will just listen to literally anything and have the most basic taste in the world. But nowadays, I just I'm kind of open. I've mellowed actually on country music. The one thing I really didn't like was country, and then moving to Indiana and Kevin introducing me to some really good country songs. I've mellowed on that. I'll kind of listen to anything, but my favorites, Fleetwood Mac. Yeah, it would probably be Fleetwood Mac. I enjoy Taylor Swift. I enjoy one band that's not as prominent that I really like is Future Islands.
In terms of contemporary performers, the performer that is by far my favorite would be Jason Isbell.
Oh, we love Jason Isbell in this household.
He's done a lot of great songs. A couple that stand out would be Alabama Pines.
He's so good live. My favorite is 24 Frames.
If We Were Vampires. These are great songs.
This song makes me cry.
Generally, I'm one of those guys that like old Broadway show tunes. I love Sondheim. I love Gershwin, Cole Porter. Huge fan of Cole Porter. I was really happy recently. I was in a bookstore. They had a big, thick collection of the letters of Cole Porter.
He was so excited. It was very cute.
And my all-time favorite singer, of course, is Francis Albert Sinatra. Jessica's second question: how do you decompress and disconnect after investigation or discussion of sensitive cases?
We don't. Ha! No, I'm just kidding.
It's something we struggle with.
We really have a hard time with that. It's very difficult. I don't know. I don't think we do a very good job of it, to be perfectly blunt. There's been times where stuff has happened and it's like wrecked our week, emotionally. And you want to, I think we kind of, it's delightful working with this man right here, Kevin Greenlee. I love it. But I think we both, because we are spouses and also work together, then we can't escape it, because it's like, oh, this happened. And then like, oh, let's make dinner. We try sometimes. We're thinking about implementing some measures maybe that could make our separate our work and life a little bit better, but achieving that work-life balance has been difficult. Things that help are just watching a silly, funny movie, going for a walk, playing with the dog, just basic stuff. But it's very easy for us to say we should do that, but when you're feeling really depressed or like overwhelmed by something, it can be difficult to implement that, is what we found.
Rob asks, is Kevin still a stickler for fresh produce?
Yes.
I'm very specific, as you've heard me discourse on hamburger and hot dog buns.
Yeah, you're always excited when like there's specific farmers markets, or these guys have the best oranges, or there's a lot of very specific produce dreams that Kevin had. My Christmas present for him last year. Can I tell them that?
Oh yes. Tell
I got him. He was always going around. You know that song? Well, most of you probably don't know that song, but there's a song called "Yes, We Have No Bananas," and that was written back in the day. There was a banana shortage of a specific type of banana, Gross Michael or Gross Michelle or something like that. And that was the predominant banana type at the time. The type we have now is different. But so that kind of, there was a blight. Those bananas went out of favor. I'm really boiling down an important moment in agricultural history. So if I'm getting anything wrong, I apologize. But they now we have a new banana, but there's this whole thing. And Kevin's always been like, I really want to try the old time bananas. Those bananas apparently taste more like banana candy. That's what they're based on. And the amount of times...
And I'm a guy who likes candy.
The amount of times I had to hear this. The amount of times there was the speculation about the banana candies and the old bananas of yore and the ancient bananas. And I was just like, oh my God.
We used to live in Brooklyn, New York. And I saw online that someone said, oh, you could buy this other type of bananas sometimes in... certain stands and farmer markets
under the table in
Brooklyn
in a paper bag.
I looked.
Kevin looked. He's been searching for these bananas forever, and I'm like, you're not going to find them. So I ordered them special for him, and they tasted like bananas.
They tasted better than bananas.
They were slightly better than bananas. I'm not a huge banana fan, to be honest. They're okay. I'm not like fighting with them, but I'm not a fan. And I think they didn't blow my mind, but they were cool. I mean, it was cool to have old time bananas, in fairness. So yes, we had old bananas. My granddad always used to sing that song for some reason.
Why don't we stop for there? And there's still more questions, and I think we'll probably pick up with those later.
Rob's banana question brought us to a screeching halt. We slipped on that banana peel. All right, you guys have a great night. Bye.
If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for the Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.